Good morning and welcome back. Dr. Boni Halwale and Gladys Wanga didn't take a break. They've been talking about continuing matters that have not been completed. But here we are, and I want us now to focus on the road to 2022, the road to elections, because we're just about 14 months to that, because it should be on the 9th of August 2022. There's been reports, allegations that there could be a plot to extend the current term of parliament. Are they unfounded, or they're just mere allegations? But also we know that so much work to be done at a time that the Court of Appeal is expected to hear the appeal against the BBI judgment by the High Court. The hearings will begin on the 29th of June and go up to the 2nd of July. The IEBC is undergoing reconstitution at a time that the selection panel is looking into more than 660 applications of people that want to be commissioners. The vacancies are just 4, but then again, so much work all the way ending up in nominations and elections of 2022. Dr. Chris Omalwa, are we at a safe place to say that we know what you're doing and you're preparing for a credible election come 2022 with all these matters pending?
Thank you. As we speak right now, we are already under a constitutional crisis. A constitutional crisis in the sense that Parliament passed the BBI bill, and the 90 days have started counting, whereby IBC is obligated to conduct a referendum within the 90 days. But unfortunately, with the High Court ruling, where there was that permanent injunction, IBC cannot do anything. And one thing, Sam, when you look at the BBI bill, it talks of the 70 new constituencies. And once the 70 new constituencies have passed, whether through referendum or whether through a parliamentary initiative, IBC is obligated that it must conduct the elections.
Is or will be?
Will be obligated, because I use the word if it passes, will be obligated to conduct elections in 360 constituencies. But before that, under Article 88 of the Constitution, IBC's functions are there. First, it must do the delimitation of boundaries, as outlined in Article 89, which needs time. It must do a poll register, which needs time. It must do the civic education. And before the delimitation of boundaries, there must be public participation. So the issue is time aspect. And that's why Kenyans are saying it is true. There is a possibility that if this goes through, the elections might not be held in 2022. Under the same Article 89, it says that when it comes to the limitation of boundaries, it should be done not more than 12 months to elections. As we speak right now, we do not have the 12 months. But when you look at the BBI bill, there's a transition clause talking of 6 months. That means IBC should be able to do the delimitation, do the poll register, everything within the short frame. But IBC, does it have the capacity? So what I'm saying, Sam, my prediction is the Court of Appeal will do its ruling, determination. This matter will find itself to the Supreme Court. It will go to the Supreme Court. When IBC went to court, they overturned part of the injunctions, but they said, don't do.
It's a stay.
They stayed, and they told them that please do not do anything pertaining the referendum matter. So, in other words, when the Court of Appeal, in case it overturns, and in case it goes to the Supreme Court, and if one way or another Supreme Court allows it to go through, the court will give IBC fresh 90 days. And that means when you give them fresh 90 days to start preparing for referendum, automatically the general election is the Supreme Court which will make a determination when we are going to have the general election, in case the BBI is going to go through. So what Kenyans are thinking about, it is possible. But what we are saying is this: we wouldn't want elections, because when you read the Constitution, it is very clear when the elections are supposed to be held. So is it by design? Is it a conspiracy? But the matter is in the courts. So whatever you are saying, what the Kenyans are thinking, there's a possibility.
Honorable Wanga, are you compelled by, or are you persuaded by this reasoning of that possibility of pushing the election in case the BBI process drags in the courts, as he says?
No, my own view is we should hold elections as per the Constitution. That is my view. But the issues of time, and this is what the president, I think, referred to in his speech in Madaraka Day as, you know, the burden of choice. Who bears that burden of choice? Now we are, there was expectation. Parliament, almost in its entirety, passed the BBI. The county assemblies did.
43.
And I think as we go through the court processes, and of course, you know, anybody is allowed to go to court at any point to injunct the processes and so on. And the courts are doing what they must rightfully do. But I think at the back of their minds, you know, being the Kenyans that they are, we must keep in mind the issue of the timings, because what is going to mess up the whole election cycle is the timings in court. Because if the processes had gone on as we had planned, or as had been moving, there would have been no problem. We'd have had the referendum, you know, we'd have had the referendum prepared in 90 days from the time Parliament passed. After those 90 days, we'd have had the process of delimitation of boundaries, would have gone into election under the new constitution. Now, the problem is, Kenyans, 4 million of them signed the BBI bill, 4 million of them. And I see people saying, you know, just forget about the BBI process. Let's go to elections using the old constitution. 4 million Kenyans signed for the BBI process to proceed. These are Kenyans whose aspirations are that we want a change. We want something different as we move into the next election. We want to be able to deal with this issue of winner take it all. We want more money to come to our counties. These are the aspirations of those Kenyans as they signed that BBI bill. And this is the aspiration that we are taking away from them. Why? Because of technicalities that have now rocked that BBI process. And not content, just technicalities as to whether the president, you know, is a citizen enough to move forward a popular initiative. I mean, and that is the burden of choice that the president spoke about. Who bears that burden? Right now we are in a crisis, which we have put ourselves in. Because now we don't have enough time within which to carry out all our processes. Let me say for the record, for me, the elections should be conducted on the second Tuesday of August in the 5th year. It should be that, because let me tell you the truth. The burden of that choice of extending the elections will be borne by some of us here, especially the people who are in Parliament. In fact, if Kenyans are unhappy with that choice, they will say, okay, you people who wanted to extend your term, sasa mwende nyumbani nyinyi wote, we have a new crop, you know, so that, yeah, so
all right. So
at the end of the day, I think as our courts, you know, go through these processes, that question of the burden of choice must remain in their minds. And the fact that this BBI process is not moved from being a thing of two people or one person or whatever it is a process that holds the aspirations of at least the 4 million Kenyans who signed it, and many more who did not sign it just because they didn't receive that form on good time.
And of course, that judgment is subject of the appeals that are in court already. 3.8 million people had been verified by IEBC as having backed the BBI process, but the High Court found that they were not in the right place to do the verification because they didn't have the quorum of 5, among other reasons. All those are subject of appeal. But Dr. Boni Halwale, I recall in the last parliament, I don't know whether you were in the Joint Select Committee that worked on election laws, but at that time, there's so much work that went into it in 2016, reforming the IEBC, reducing even the commissioners from 9 to 7. And it was quite difficult because based on the Krugler report on the events of 2007-2008, you should have a commission ready to go at least 2 years to the election. Now here we are still reconstituting. We may have the commissioners at least 1 year to the election, but then again, so much work in their hands with court cases. What is the safest route, in your view, to approaching the election of 2022 with all these matters being considered?
What I've heard Honorable Chris Wamalwa and Gladys Wanga address is actually wishful thinking. They are wishing that the things they are building in their minds can be the reality to drive the process. On 9th of August 2022, there will be an election in Kenya. And if this parliament, which is so highly opinionated, and which has been captured by the executive, and which is very well represented on this panel, thinks that you can vary that, I tell you, honorable members, you'll all be chased away from that parliament.
Respect, there's this misinterpretation. We never say that.
Just a moment.
You are giving
you will respond
on how the Supreme Court...
Dr. Chris Omalwa, you will respond.
Rules of debate.
His point.
Yeah.
No, but
try-
Honorable Alwale should not
put words
mislead.
in our hands. Yeah.
I have just said here
Absolutely.
myself that
What
elections.
is misleading? In
I am in favor of elections being held on 9th, but he's saying that what we are wishing for is extension,
Which is not the
but which we said exact opposite.
Okay, all right.
Your question was...
So where is
the
the
narrative
Can we
people are
now?
talking about
Can we
the
now?
position
Can we
of
now allow him to make his point?
postponement?
make his point,
We are
of course,
dissatisfied you with
without
your issues, yeah?
without misleading.
Please
The
go ahead,
second
Dr.
point,
Omalwa.
over and above their wishful thinking, is the issue of BBI. Gladys Wanga, the reason why the two of you would rather you have an election after the so-called BBI has seen the light of the day, it is because your leadership is conscious of the fact that you cannot win an election in Kenya without BBI. So you are trying everything possible so as to make sure that...
What do you mean with that?
What do you mean?
Who can't win an election without BBI?
Their leadership.
Which leadership?
What election? Because there are only 6 positions in this country. Which position are you talking about?
Okay. I am saying my second point is that why they are driven in this wishful thinking, it is because their leadership. And for now, there are 2 leaders there, the one of Fort Kenya and the one of ODM. They know that they cannot win a general election without BBI because they have premised their winning strategy on ethnic mobilization. So they would like each one of them to come with their little community to put it together to give them their numbers. And that's why they are wishing about BBI. The best way to approach it, honorable members, is accept that in 2022, BBI will not be there. It's dead, completely dead. The 17 grounds that were raised by the 5 judges, if only one of them stands, BBI will not go anywhere. You can put all those lawyers you have put, including Queen's Counsels, but they have to overturn those.
What if Dr. Boni Halwale, the Court of Appeal agrees with the appellants and the Supreme Court still agrees with them?
Yes.
Are
How
we
is it dead?
at a safe place to go to the election with all the requirements under the BBI constitutional amendments, Constitutional Amendment Bill of 2020?
Yeah, that's why I used the English word wishful thinking, because the issues raised in the judgment,
So you don't see them succeeding at the Court of Appeal?
there's no chance whatsoever.
Okay, Fred.
And now,
So is Boni Alwale a judge of the Court of Appeal?
No,
But let me
not.
also raise something.
Let-
There's something I must point out, because this hypocrisy cannot be allowed to stand. You know, you know what Dr. Halwale is referring to as ethnic mobilization, that our leadership, do not think we can make it because they are used to, the issue of ethnic mobilization and so on. And just because he has moved to UDA or the Tangatanga group, do you know Boni Halwale was part of the NASA, management team? And when we were going to the last election, for us to, mobilize the force that we had, there was even, positions designated. Some of these positions that are being proposed in the BBI were designated by Boni Halwale himself. Musalia Mudavadi had a designated position, Honorable Wetangula had a designated, by Boni Halwale himself. This process that he is now pretending to demonize, this hypocrisy must be called out.
Okay.
The day we were to Huru Park, announcing Raila Odinga as the presidential candidate for NASA, these positions were announced there, that once we take over power, this is the way we are going to distribute these positions, because that is the nature of Kenya. The politics of Kenya is such that we have to hold together.
Allow me to give a chance to
and
Fred
so,
The issue is this, point of correction.
so
Honorable Wanga,
Dr. Halwale
okay.
cannot come here. No, cannot come here. hypocritically and pretend that the proposals in the BBI are new to him or are processes that he does not agree with. Okay. Only because he is now in UDA, he tries to say BBI is bad. But we must look at BBI, what is good about it, for us to be honest with Kenyans. What is good about BBI, what is bad with BBI, and then we go.
Can he answer the question?
Dr.
Because he has not
Chris Wamala,
answered the question you asked about the 9 commissioners and reduction to 5 or 7.
Wait.
You should be firm that the question you ask,
that's fine.
be able to answer. He has not
Fred
answered.
Okango, what do you make of this? Because obviously it's turned out to be a political contest on what happens. But what is in contest is that this country will need to transition to the next set of leadership, because every 5 years there should be an election. Do you see any threat to that happening?
Yesterday, we wrote a letter as a party to the IBC Commissioner, Wafula Wanyonyi Chebukati. And we raised 4 fundamental issues in our meeting that we do expect that the chairman will invite us as a party. And one of the issues we raised is IBC preparedness to conduct the 2022 election. Number 1. In that context, we also raised the issue of delimitation of electoral boundaries, which is a constitutional mandate of IBC. In the event that we have a referendum, in the event that the court, because I have been trying to avoid discussing the issue in court, particularly now that the matter is in court, I don't want to talk about it. But the facts are, in the event that that matter proceeds and a referendum is given a go-ahead, how is IBC going to deal with the issue of delimitation? Do they have the budgets? Are they ready? Can they do it within time? Number 2 is the issue that people have been talking about in low tones, the issue of extending the term of parliament. People are talking about postponing election. There's nothing like postponing election. You cannot postpone this election. The election of 2022 is predetermined. It has a constitutional date, the 2nd Tuesday of August of every 5th year. And that day, the members of parliament will be elected the same way the president is elected. That is what it says. However, people are talking about timelines. They're talking about all these excuses that can lead to an extension. The only time that Chris Wamalwa, Honorable Gladys Wanga, and other members of parliament can now look at how to extend that term is when there's a risk of security in terms of threats. And they have to do that only for a maximum of 12 months. That's what the law says. They can do 6, then 6, and through resolution. However, what we are considering now are technical issues that are not bordering the issue of security threat. They are not. They are technical issues in managing our politics, in managing our election. IEBC, as the election manager, should be able, and as an independent commission, and that's why we have asked Chebukati these questions. We hope we have that meeting as soon as possible, and we'll give this feedback to the public, should be able to guide and tell us, the members of parliament in deciding on the budgets, have they given them enough budgets to ensure that we are ready for the 2022 election? Have they tested the KIMS kit in readiness for the 2020 election so that we don't see a situation where things are failing? Have they put measures in place to ensure that the delimitation happens without contestation? Because the proposal in the Constitutional Amendment Bill 2020 has proposed 70, and originally also they're supposed to delimit
But Fred, you know that there's a ban on engaging in anything BBI.
That we know.
Instead of IBC.
So that ban will not be forever till Jesus comes. That ban will be lifted at some point.
So obviously IBC will not be ready for that.
When it is lifted, at that time, will they still be ready so that when we go into elections, some 2022, we don't go back to court and say, by the way, the time we were given to conduct this exercise requires that we have to involve the public. The public were not involved. Those issues are technical issues, some. We must look at them, we must talk about them as a people, and most importantly, we must not enter into that area with a view of fixing it quick fix. Because it will...
Fred, let me ask you this. If BBI appeal succeeds at the court, there's no further challenge, and even if there's further challenge, then it's still successful on the side of the proponents. Is it possible to pursue a referendum post the election?
That decision will be made when we arrive there.
Okay. And Dr. Chris Wamala, you insinuated that...
I think...
just a moment, I'll get back to you. Dr. Chris Wamala, you insinuated that it may be necessary to push the election if the Supreme Court gives those directions. But look at this. The Wafula Chebukati team of 3 commissioners, himself, Boya Molu, and Professor Abdi Guliye, their contracts expire January 2023. So if you had to push the election from August to any other month, you might interfere with their timelines. How then do you plan to surmount such a challenge at a time that it may be difficult to reconstitute a commission within an election?
Remember last time I was on this studio, I talked about the issue of the selection panel. And we requested His Excellency the President that now the IBC law had been passed by Parliament, there was a lot of clarity as pertains the selection panel. He should move with speed and appoint the selection panel so that they can start doing the interviews for purposes of having the 4 commissioners under IBC. I say that. So all this, we have it in our mind. And I've already said we're already in a constitutional crisis. And when you're in a constitutional crisis, it's only the courts. It's only the courts. Remember in 2013, when Mutola Kilonzo Sr., they went to court. And it's the courts that made a determination on the election date. So what we are putting across is about the possibilities.
But that was
right now,
a transition election
exactly,
from old constitution to new one.
Absolutely, but even now, we're already in a constitutional crisis. Pertaining this bill, BBI, you can't wish away BBI. One, it passed through Senate by more than 2/3 majority. It passed through National Assembly, more than 2/3 majority. It passed through the county assemblies, almost 90%. The 4 million Kenyans. So it is something that you cannot wish away. Okay. They have a right to be heard. Now the court is going to look into this matter vis-a-vis the aspect of the national importance. Everybody is focused that we should have elections ideally 9th of August. But the circumstances, the preparation of IBC, I'm happy my colleague mentioned about the issue of the curricular report, which talked about the 24 months. But down the line, have we implemented what the curricular report said? The president is very much aware of the curricular report. We still don't have selection panel interviews over for these commissioners. We live in this country. So is it by design that we are doing things for purposes of having a constitutional crisis?
And do you
as
think
you clearly put the commissioners by January 2023, it will be over. So we'll be putting things in a constitutional crisis. So as the judges will be making a determination in their mind, they live in this Kenya. They are very much aware that the commissioners, the expiry will be January 2023. They know about that.
All right.
So we are requesting the commissioners, we are requesting the selection panel to move with speed, and also requesting the Court of Appeal to consolidate all these matters so that they can make a determination as quick as possible.
I want us to listen to something.
No, they live in Kenya. If the presidential petition is done within 14 days, why not this one?
I think you're all in agreement that there are serious challenges to preparations.
There are serious challenges.